I call Chris Farfoy. Could I just, so I'm calling you,
Yeah.
just for new members. If you stand and you want the call, you must call, because the person who calls gets the call. So just Chris Farfoy.
Thank you very much, Mr Chair, for your wise ruling. It's a pleasure to speak to this parole amendment bill because I believe, and having been a former member of the Law and Order Select Committee, that there were lots of variables that the Select Committee and of course the government was trying to balance up. One of them obviously being the rights of the victims, and we've heard many cases, and one of the considerations given under this bill was the re-victimisation of people, victims who were made to go through what may be unnecessary parole board hearings. On the other side of the equation, Mr Chair, of course, was the rights of the offenders and their right to be heard whether or not they were ready for parole or not, for their eligibility, to be assessed for their eligibility for parole. And of course there is some efficiencies trying to be gained here with trying to get rid of the unnecessary parole hearings that were being held. There could have been instances where they were either unattended or there was absolutely no risk, no chance that an offender who was up for parole was going to be granted parole at all. So with those factors, and I'm sure a number of others that were considered by the Law and Order Select Committee, I think my former colleagues in that committee have come to the right balance in making sure we do get the efficiencies right, that the rights of the victims, and we've heard some harrowing stories of many families, and as Jacinda Dern has pointed out, many organisations who have been offended against having to go through the horror or the pain of the offending, have been through because of the process of a parole hearing, and also, I guess, making sure that the rights of those who are seeking parole are met as well. This bill, in its purest and simplest form, gives the parole board the ability to increase the maximum time between hearings for parole hearings from 12 months to 2 years. And if parole hasn't been given, and I think I'm right in referring to new section 10, which inserts new section 21A, if the parole board doesn't give an offender parole, then has the ability to set a date for the next parole hearing if it does decline that parole. If that date is 12 months beyond the hearing that is taking place, I think what you do give there is an incentive for that offender, I guess, to, in a crude way, to shape up. And to have these activities that they are given as targets to ensure that if they do come back at a later date, that they have met, and I know the word milestones wasn't used in the legislation, it was changed to relevant activities, to make sure that they had taken some action to get back onto, I guess, what you could call the road to redemption. If some of those activities were fulfilled, then I guess the parole board would say, yes, you can come back to the parole board to have your eligibility assessed. And in some cases, if by some miracle someone before that date came forward and came through with these relevant activities well before 12 months, there is the ability for the parole board to bring that parole hearing forward. So I believe, and that's why we are supporting on this side of the House this legislation, that the balance between those three main factors has been struck. And I understand from some of my other colleagues that it was relatively a good working relationship from members on this side of the House and members on the other side of the House, and I know there is some dissent from the Green Party, but all in all, that most members around that select committee table believe that the balance that has been struck is the right one. I know there will be some people out there who will say that the offenders really don't deserve any more rights. And as Calvin Davis has said, that's probably the view of the Sensible Sentencing Trust. But, Mr Chair, we would say that the balance has been struck because there will be a lot fewer, Mr Chair. Mr Chair?
I call David Clendon.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Mr Chair, this we clearly understand